If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button before we begin. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful, emotional stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the moments that change our lives forever rarely arrive with noise or drama? They don't begin with shouting, broken glass, or shocking revelations like the ones you see in movies. Life rarely announces its turning points that way. Instead, the biggest shifts often start quietly, almost invisibly. Sometimes it's a small decision. Sometimes it's a single conversation. And sometimes, it's something as simple as a knock on a door late at night. A knock so ordinary that you almost ignore it. But that night, that small sound forced me to question everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the quiet, aching loneliness that can slowly grow inside a marriage without anyone noticing. So settle in, because this story isn't really about a movie night. It's about how one harmless choice, a choice so small it seemed meaningless at the time, can quietly redirect the course of an entire life while you still believe everything is perfectly normal. I never imagined that such an ordinary evening could carry so much weight. There were no warning signs. No strange feeling in my chest. No sudden sense that something in my life was about to change. The world outside continued exactly as it always had. Cars moved along the street. The refrigerator hummed softly in the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked with its usual calm indifference. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing shattered. Nothing screamed. No storm arrived crashing through the windows. If anything, the night felt painfully normal. But sometimes the most dangerous changes in life don't arrive like storms. They arrive quietly and settle inside your heart before you even realize they're there. That night my husband was away again. Business trips had become a regular part of our marriage. At first they were occasional, a few days here, a conference there. But over the years they slowly turned into something more constant. Airports blurred together. Cities came and went. Hotel rooms began to feel more familiar to him than our own living room. In the beginning, I used to ask him not to go. Not in a dramatic way. I never begged or cried. But sometimes when he stood by the door with his suitcase, I would hold on to his sleeve just a little longer than necessary. Not long enough to stop him. Just long enough to say, without words, I wish you'd stay. Sometimes I tried to hide it with jokes. You know this house gets lonely without you, I would say with a smile. He always answered the same way. Just a few more trips, he'd promise. Things will settle down soon. It won't always be like this. I wanted to believe him. For a while I did. But eventually something changes inside you when the same promise is repeated too many times. You stop asking. Not because it hurts less, but because pretending you're okay becomes easier than admitting you're not. That evening unfolded just like dozens of others before it. I cooked dinner for one. The food was good. At least I think it was. But it didn't really matter. I ate slowly, chewing without tasting. Eating out of habit more than hunger. A glass of wine sat beside my plate. I poured it automatically, the way someone follows a routine they've repeated too many times. The television played in the background, but I couldn't have told you what was on. I wasn't watching. I didn't want entertainment. I wanted noise. Because silence inside an empty house has a strange way of growing louder the longer you sit with it. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down and saw his name on the screen. A message. Asterisk, I'll call you later. Asterisk. I stared at the words for a moment. Later usually meant tomorrow. Sometimes even the day after. But I locked the phone and set it back down. I told myself it was enough. It had to be enough. I carried my glass to the sink and rinsed it slowly, watching the last trace of red wine swirl down the drain. That's when I heard it. A knock. Soft. Gentle. Patient. I froze. No one ever visited that late. For a moment I didn't move at all. I assumed it had to be a mistake. Someone at the wrong door. Then it came again. Another knock. Still quiet. Still polite. And somehow that made it even stranger. Curiosity slowly replaced hesitation. And I walked toward the door. When I opened it, Daniel was standing there. My neighbor. He lived just down the hall. A man in his early 30s who had always been polite but distant in the way neighbors usually are. We had exchanged friendly smiles near the mailbox, shared brief conversations in passing. Cold weather tonight. One of us might say, "Yeah, feels like winter finally showed up." The other would reply, "Small talk. Nothing more. Nothing personal. Nothing memorable." And yet there he was, standing outside my door holding 2 DVDs in one hand and a bowl of freshly made popcorn in the other. Steam drifted into the cool night air. He gave a hesitant smile, the kind someone wears when they're already preparing to be turned away. "Movie night," he said softly. I made way too much popcorn. For a second, I didn't know what to say. I knew the correct response. A polite laugh. A quick thank you. Then a closed door. That's what a good wife would have done. But loneliness has a strange effect on time. It stretches seconds longer than they should be. It makes hesitation feel harmless. It can even make bad decisions look innocent. And I hesitated. Just long enough. Then I stepped aside. "Sure," I said. "Kumein." Daniel walked in with an ease that caught me off guard. Not awkward. Not intrusive. Comfortable. He set the popcorn bowl on the coffee table and placed the movies beside it before sitting down on the couch like someone who had done it 100 times before. Even though he hadn't. The warm smell of butter filled the room. It mixed with a faint hint of his cologne. Unfamiliar, but strangely comforting. We picked a movie. At least I think we did. The screen lit up, casting soft flickering light across the room. But neither of us really watched. Instead we talked. About work. About random childhood memories. About the strange little habits people develop when they live alone. Nothing important. And somehow, everything important. What struck me most was the way Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't wait impatiently for his turn to speak. He was simply present. Fully. Completely. And I realized something that surprised me. I couldn't remember the last time someone had listened to me like that. Not out of obligation. Not out of politeness. But as if my thoughts actually mattered. Without realizing it, I began sharing things I hadn't spoken out loud in months. Not complaints. Just quiet truths. The kind of thoughts you carry silently, until someone makes you feel safe enough to set them down. At some point during the movie, Daniel stretched his arm along the back of the couch. It seemed casual. Almost accidental. Our shoulders brushed once. Then again. I told myself it meant nothing. But something in the air shifted. The room suddenly felt warmer. Smaller. More intimate. His knee touched mine briefly. Neither of us moved right away. I shifted slightly. He shifted too. And without either of us acknowledging it, the distance between us slowly disappeared. Then both of our hands reached for the popcorn at the same time. Our fingers touched. Neither of us pulled back immediately. That moment lasted longer than it should have. Long enough for my heartbeat to change. Long enough for awareness to replace innocence. I glanced at him. He wasn't watching the movie. He was watching me. Not casually. Not politely. Honestly. Unfiltered. My stomach tightened. I turned my eyes back toward the screen, but I could still feel his attention. Then my phone vibrated on the table. I didn't even have to look. I knew who it was. Still the screen lit up. My husband's name appeared. For a moment, the room felt completely silent. The movie continued playing, but neither of us heard it. And then something happened that should have warned me. Something small but important. I didn't reach for the phone. I let it keep vibrating until the screen went dark again. And that single decision should have told me how far I had already drifted. Daniel's fingers brushed against mine again. This time, I didn't move away. "You're quiet," he said gently. There was no pressure in his voice. No expectation. Just curiosity. "Do you want me to leave?" That was my moment. My exit. My last clean chance to end the night exactly where it should have ended. One word. That's all it would have taken. But instead, I stayed silent. And in that silence, I learned something terrifying. Sometimes the most dangerous choices we make aren't the ones we say out loud. They're the ones we don't. And that night, the silence said everything.